it will be recorded. I haven't got my cheat sheet in front of me, so just bear with me. That the video and sound recording is obviously taking place. So people in attendance are deemed to have participated in the meeting. Okay, I think that covers it. The the absence of it. Sorry, I don't know where it's gone, but anyway, I'll go straight to the apologies for absence. So apologies for absence from Biggleswade Town Council members, Councillor Albone, Councillor Barrett, Councillor Russell, Councillor Jones and Councillor Patel. Moving on to item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any Town Council members have any disposable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests this evening? Other than we're all residents of the town, but apart from that, in case no. Okay, great. Moving on. Number 3, I think there probably are a couple of town mayors announcements, but I'll save them for the more sort of formal meeting, probably in September. I think, and save a few up for over the summer, but nothing urgent that you need to know about, which is good. Number 4, public open session. I'll sort of pause on this number at the moment because this is an extraordinary council meeting and we've got the one item on the agenda at number 9. I'm going to suspend standing orders this evening and allow our CBC ward councillors who are with us this evening to participate, obviously on number 9 rather than on perhaps the other bits, and so they can contribute as sort of full members, if you like, this evening. I hope that's everyone's in agreement with that. Councillor Fage.
Yeah, could I just have had a look at your standing orders? I don't know, obviously up to the clerk, but I would suggest reinstating those standing orders before you take your vote so that it's still a town council decision.
Yes. Yeah, let's see where we get to, but thank you. Yeah, we'll certainly do that. Yeah, you can't vote. No, but speaking from the chair, I do appreciate and value the input from the ward councillors this evening. So thank you both for coming along this evening, contributing. Yeah, so that really covers public open session, unless there's anything you wanted to mention now at the start, but we do only have one item on the agenda, so it's probably quite limited. Okay, right. We obviously don't have an invited speaker this evening. Members' questions from BTC members? Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard reports that there's some sewage leaking into the River Ivel. Do we know anything about that, and what action have we taken if that is the case?
I think Mr. Hosseini is indicating he wants to speak, so I'll let him respond to that, or at least contribute to that.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman and members. We've had a series, I think it might have been 2 emails recently from an individual from another parish regarding this matter. I think, if this is the right topic that we're on about, we will be releasing those emails, obviously sharing those with members as part of the weekly status report on Friday for information, essentially.
Okay, Councillor Strawn.
Well, I think it's actually quite a serious thing from the emails that I've seen, and I'd hope we'd be in contact with Anglian Water and indeed with the Environment Agency if there is any evidence of that. And indeed, I would hope that possibly our public realm head could actually go and have a look and see whether there's anything happening down there. But this is actually quite serious. It's a health risk, and it must be dealt with. And it's no good waiting until Friday to have a report back. We should be doing something actively now.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I only saw the email late this afternoon myself as well, but I do have a contact at Anglia Water that I met last year when I visited the water recycling plant myself, that relates to this. I can maybe pass that on to officers and they can get onto that maybe tomorrow. I think it's probably the best route. I don't know about the Environment Agency, whether you've got any contacts there, but I've got the Anglia Water one I can certainly pass on.
Oh, we can find one, so that's fine.
Okay, is that okay, Councillor Strawn? And we'll
the important thing is action is taken, and it's not just let drift. And we're going to have a very hot day tomorrow, and that is going to add to the problem if there is one.
No, you're quite right, and I think we'll definitely follow up with that. You've made a note, and well, I'll chase them up as well. Okay. Any other members' questions? No. Okay. Thank you for that. Number 7, we've got the minutes from. We haven't got the minutes from the 14th of July. I think they're coming for the next council meeting. That's right. Okay, great. And number 8, matters arising, but obviously there aren't because we haven't got the minutes. So straight into number 9. Okay, we've got the local plan call for sites. I won't read out the preamble because it's quite a long one, but I think what I would like to seek as an objective this evening as chair is to have some sort of maybe agreement's too strong a word, but certainly an outcome of where we think things are viable, where we think things what may be possible, what may not be possible, what works for the town, what doesn't work for the town. There's a lot to go on here. There was also a note circulated by another member as well, which some of you will have seen. And obviously we've got maps. I think all of you've got maps here as well, which cover as best we can the known sites within the parish. My only other thought we need to consider, of course, and some of these are listed already on here, are perhaps where there are areas on the edge of the parish of Biggleswade that could also impact on services or impact on things within the town as well, for example, in Sutton or whatever. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration as well as sites within Biggleswade parish. So, Councillor Whitaker.
Just as well, something to consider, although it's a call for sites, they aren't all for housing. Some of it is for green infrastructure, some of it is for business development. So I think as people are going through the sites, it's worth bearing in mind what they're for, what they're intended for. And it might be useful if, as a council, you have a view as to what you prefer the intended use to be, if there is several options there. Okay,
thank you for that. So we've got the maps. Asia, are we looking at anything on the screen? Or okay, so are you all right to talk about that? So Councillor Foster is basically going to be has got some things to put up on the screen in control, and maybe roving around the room. I don't know later on, so we'll kind of see how we go. So it'd be an audio visual kind of feast this evening. To look into various aspects of this. So I think we'll go from there, and I'll pass over to Councillor Foster. I think some of this will happen as we go through the different sites and areas as described. Over to you.
Thank you. So the intention really is to pull the map up onto the screen so that members can see the map. Obviously, you've got a copy of the map in front of you. Is to then look at some of the key ones that we might want to focus on. Clearly, when you look at the map and its total, it gives a picture of what might come forward over the coming years. I think it's probably helpful to go into each one or some key ones to start with, identify what we want, what our views on each of those, look at the whole picture. So you've got the map. We've also got the breakdown of the individual sites across Biggleswade Pot and the surrounding area. So you'll be able to identify that as well. And obviously, if you will have read the detail in the agenda, you've got that as well. So I think what we'll do, we'll bring the map up onto the screen. I think probably we'll start on the land east of Biggleswade as a starting point. Once we've done that, then we'll sort of work the way around and see where we go. So, excuse me while I attempt to bring this up. There we go. Look. Mouse has just failed on me.
While I'm doing that,
Please do, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just to say that obviously there's been no formal announcement around Tempsford. However, there is an expectation of a formal announcement around Tempsford, which would be 40,000 houses, which would, we understand, be taken into account in terms of the local plan housing numbers. So that means that realistically, the latter part of the local plan, probably CBC have enough numbers in terms of housing, but probably for the first 10 to 15 years, that's where these sites are going to be needed, if that makes sense. But it does mean that in the later part of the local plan, they're less likely to be needed. So it's worth thinking about deliverability as well, I suppose.
Thank you.
Before we start discussing the sites, is it okay just to set the scene of what has permission in Biggleswade at the moment? Because we have sites on here which we know are already going to happen in some way, shape or form? Is it worth just bringing us on to one page there, or do you want to?
No, carry on.
Whatever's
I think,
that's
no,
fine.
I mean, this is, I mean, I've been sort of mulling over this evening about, prior to this evening, about how we were going to do this, because it is quite complex and there's lots of different moving pieces. So I'm happy for, colleagues to contribute. So yeah, Councillor Fady, if you want to give a reminder to colleagues of where we are, and that would be very helpful.
Okay, if I set the scene, hopefully that helps, because that will hopefully set the tone for the way we can approach some of the conversation around perhaps some of the more controversial sites. So I've been crunching some numbers. When I say crunching some numbers, I mean counting. It's not actually that complicated. So we have 1,500 under 13407, 136,407, which are already due to be built out. They have permission, 1,500. We have 353 which are going on Land North, which we obviously objected to in 2018 and consistently since then, but they are coming forward. So it's not actually marked on the map, but it is just south of 136,679. So we know they're going to happen. The other windfall development that I think we can expect, but is not coming in the call, is not marked on the call for sites as far as I can see, is the 350 odd houses that we know that Taylor Wimpey have options over, which is the final part of King's Reach. So they're included in they're certainly included in the master plan, but I understand that a planning application would need to stand in its own right. But if you look at where it is geographically, chances are, I don't know, Councillor Whitaker might be able to correct me, but my guess is that, subject to being policy compliant, my guess is that that's a viable site. Was it in the previous bit? No, it wasn't in the previous local plan. So why that hasn't come forward, I don't quite know, but I do know from Taylor Wimpey it's something they're still looking at. So that is a total of, if you include all of those units that are either with permission or as we expect, like that last site that I just mentioned, that is an additional 2,203 units. 2,203. In the last census, Biggleswade had just under 9,500 properties. So that is an increase of 23%. So bear in mind the local plan period up to 2035, that's growth in the town of almost a quarter. We obviously then have Home Farm, which is for sale, not residential, but commercial. That will come forward, no doubt, very soon. CBC need it to fund large parts of their capital plan. We've also had considerable development on Stratton Business Park, some of which was planned for, some of which not so. I think that context is important, because what Councillor Whitaker's just said is about, and I'd like your view on this, Hayley, but if we're looking at 10 to 15 years to sort of smooth CBC over with their housing numbers to Tempsford, we should be confident in pushing back hard on those developments that do not work here, because the numbers that we are already taking are substantial. The numbers that will come along with Tempsford are substantial. So we, in my view, should be viewing it through that lens this evening. But that's my only comment, just setting the scene before we start saying, oh yes, this one or that one, if that's okay, Chairman.
No, thank you, Councillor Fay. That's very helpful. Are you okay to go ahead then, Councillor Foster, and sort of what you some of the things you want to present on?
Well, I think that the main thing is what I want to do was really give members the opportunity to talk about the individual sites that have come forward. I think Councillor Fages had already spoken about the 1,500 land east of Biggleswade, which is already in the local plan, but we need to be aware of that. But there's a couple of other ones that I think directly linked to that, and the first one I really wanted to focus on was the one that's actually outside Biggleswade Wall, but it's I think we've got an invitation to meet with which is the site here was 136,620, just to the north of the 1,500 houses. I wonder what members' thoughts were in relation to that one. It's a site for residential, 92.5 hectares, just outside Biggleswade on the Potham Road. We've also got a smaller development proposed just again right next to that. So that would be the first one I'd like to suggest we make comments on. Go on, Grant. Yep.
Go on, Councillor.
I'll start off. So the smaller site just next to that, I think, is currently was Caravans once upon a time, wasn't it? Sales.
Yes.
There's a bungalow there now.
Yeah.
So I've seen that land's for sale. And I think we're thinking about, we're looking for plots of land here that can accommodate 10 or more dwellings. So for me, that would be pushing it for 10 or more dwellings. In terms of 136620, I understand how in principle, you think you can just treat it the same as 136407, the current Land East site, which has 1,500 houses on it. But having seen those designs that are going to be built out, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say there is not going to be some great big trunk road that easily connects 136620 down towards the A1 South. So all of that traffic, in my view, would be dependent on the same road network that we have consistently raised concerns about in the north of Biggleswade. That is that route into town and to employment sites and to the A1 is Potham Road. So for me, I'm not comfortable with that site at all.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Strawn.
I think Councillor Fage makes a very good point, because it's all very well having these sites and saying, yes, we develop them, but without the infrastructure such as the road system, they are undevelopable in practical terms they're going to create so many more problems. So unless there was a solution to that, then it's inappropriate for them to be developed further, because we just haven't got the infrastructure in the road system. As an example, to deal with it. I've already mentioned earlier a sewage issue. We've got a lot of issues. It's lovely in theory saying, oh, we've got land that can be built on, apart from the fact it's loss of agricultural land. But if we haven't got the infrastructure that will serve it and serve it properly, it's a backward step rather than a forward step. So I think we need to take into account the points Councillor Fage was making with regard to this particular site, that the road system is inadequate for it. And then that's got to apply in all of them where the infrastructure isn't there and can't be put there.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
I don't disagree, but I think there are perhaps other sites within that are proposed which I am more resistant to. Let's put it that way, than this one. I can make an argument for that. Because any development that comes, any proposed development that comes forward is going to have the same issue with around infrastructure. So I'm sort of minded that yes, on this particular call for sites, there are these are the sites proposed. At some point in the future, there will be other sites that come forward. So I think we should be mindful of the fact where we are looking, where I think our aspiration has always been, if there is going to be development in the town, it should be the preference might be to the east of the town. I appreciate this is slightly northeast of the town. So it's trying to make the argument, if you just say we don't want any of it, that isn't, for me, it also isn't a really sensible approach. We need to be mindful of where I think we may end up with a point where we're saying we're against of unsuitable development, but compared to some of the other sites, I think this is more suitable than others. That would be where I'm positioning it.
Okay, Councillor Whitaker.
I'm more inclined to agree with Grant, I'm afraid, Mark. And I've got a slightly different reason here. I'm looking at coalescence actually, with Sutton and Potham and that area, and also particularly for that stretch, but also for 136407. But I know they'll work out access off Danton Lane. But for that Potham residential, as you said, there's currently no logical way to get down to the A1 other than to come along and go down Saxon Drive. The other option is, and we've discussed options down to the A1 many times already associated with Land East, is they go through Sutton and they go over that bridge, which is actually a designated bridge. So you wouldn't want to be putting a development there which is going to be actually damaging an asset. So number one, I can't see a countryside gap between those northern parcels and Sutton, and you'd want to see that unless you're saying you want to be subsuming Sutton, which I don't believe that you do. So countryside gap there is important, but also where that traffic goes, because if it doesn't come down through Biggleswade, it will go through Sutton to get to Millow, to get down onto the A1. So I think for me, that's the thing that makes me less inclined to like it.
Okay, I mean, just speaking from the chair, I mean, Councillor Whitaker's made some of the points I was going to make, but I mean, I think one of the challenges for me is representing Biggleswade is that clearly this would sit within Potham CBC ward and Sutton Parish ward, but we wouldn't get any financial benefit from this if it was if it did go ahead. It would all the other parts of the parish and precept would go elsewhere, but no doubt we would have the extra pressure on services locally. It would look towards Biggleswade, not least with the points around road network and everything else as well. So I think there's some real challenges there, and it does really come up to the main road. At its extreme point, it does come up to the main road within Sutton Village as well. So yeah. Anyway, Councillor Fage.
Can I just ask, does anybody have an idea of what kind of number we would need to get to in Biggleswade for CBC to be satisfied that we are doing our bit? Because, and I look at that initially through a residential lens, but to some extent through the employment lens as well. And the reason I ask that is because, I don't think we should take any more properties than we're required to. Our infrastructure is already at breaking point, mainly the road infrastructure. We've heard about the water infrastructure. We have a very constrained site in terms of leisure facilities as well. So I think we need a finger in the air idea of numbers, which will help to guide the extent to which we may or may not accept certain sites over others.
Okay. Go on, Councillor Whittaker, and then I'll come back to Councillor Foster.
Well, I'm just trying to look up now. So Biggleswade is classed as a strategic site. It's a strategic allocation, which I'm just trying to find out, but I think that will come with it a certain expectation. So it's not as if it's a small village or town that you might get a small bit of growth. It's expected there will be significant growth around Biggleswade. So I'm just trying to find out how they define strategic site, because I think that will be very important to your question.
Okay, thanks. So if you find it, do come back to us. Councillor Foster, over to you.
Okay, so I think we've got some views on that. We'll come to some agreement at some point, but I think there's certainly merit on both sides. But I think let's see where we go.
Right.
So the next one I think I'd like to show is essentially the Biggleswade Hospital site. So if I can manage to zoom in properly, so we are talking about 135346. So this is Biggleswade Hospital. The site has been put forward for residential.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see that on the screen?
Yeah.
Thoughts on that one? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
Let me start. Where do I want me to start? So I have, so I don't have a problem with it being residential. I think it sits better than a lot of other places. However, my major concern around this site and London Road is, where are you going to put the doctor's surgery? So in terms of possible places to put a doctor's surgery in Biggleswade Hospital site, London Road or Land East. Land East, we haven't seen any mention of a doctor's site there, although I know conversations were had many months ago with different owners, but not recently. And I know there was an announcement recently that suggested it was going to be on Land East, but like I said, there's no knowledge of that from the developer perspective. So if we don't have a Land East as an option, and we say let's put the hospital site up or London Road site up, where are we going to put a new doctor's surgery?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Whittaker's point, I think this comes back to the point about infrastructure. It's not just roads, it's not just sewage, but it's the services that go with it, doctors, hospitals, etc. And Councillor Whittaker's already mentioned Thamesford and what may be happening there. And we're in grave danger of being swallowed up by there with a lot of this development. There are sites here that make logical development in looking the overall scheme of things, because they fit in close to the town. But it still comes back, without the infrastructure, that means things like doctors, hospitals and schools, etc. It's unworkable. So the sites of calls for residential, if the sites are going to be developed for residential, they must have that infrastructure. We can't go ahead as we are. The doctor's surgery is already creaking. The town is growing. Yes, we are strategic and we are incredibly important as a town, But we can't just go ahead willy-nilly and then leave the people in this town without the services and the infrastructure to live comfortably.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So I don't disagree. Some sort of health hub, healthcare provision would be wonderful. I guess I question our terms of reference. And in this process, you know, is there a category of use that's not just residential or employment or other that is specific to healthcare that we could recommend for a site? Or is that not really within our terms? In which case, opposing that site for residential on the grounds we want it to be healthcare may not be the best argument, I guess. That's my concern.
Councillor Fage, and I'll come back to Councillor Foster.
When I was thinking about this, so these two sites, London Road and the hospital, I think are really important because we are literally running out of land in Biggleswade now. Within the parish of Biggleswade, the vast majority of it is already developed.
Yeah.
And within the current envelope, within the current development envelope, there are very few sites that could potentially lend themselves to healthcare facilities. So I think if we were to come forward with a proposal for a certain number of houses, I don't want to preempt where that might be at this point, although my position is, as of 2018, was pretty clear at least. If we were to meet a housing number and say, in return, we absolutely must have these two sites kept free so that its potential for healthcare could be tapped into at some point, maybe that's a credible argument. But we would obviously need to just blanket objecting without doing our bit in terms of housing numbers is probably is a tough argument to make.
No, thank you. I mean, just one point of I know detail or observation in terms of 135, 346. There's obviously the NHS site, but next door to it there is a specialist care home, Potton House care home as well, which has a lot of dementia patients and various other challenging conditions. And I visited it fairly recently, and I would worry that there would be a lot of construction and things around there that may, I know, impact on their care perhaps or whatever. But just as an observation that it's maybe an NHS site, but it's also a health site next door in a much broader sense. But it is what it is. But that, if colleagues were not aware, that sits next door to the NHS site as well. Councillor Foster.
Given that we've just talked about the Biggleswade Hospital site, we'll reference London Road. Perhaps London Road should also be talked about. So if we talk about that one, so we are now talking about site 136312, which is the one next to the Yorkshire Grey. It's the I can zoom in. So to give people an idea, it's 136312, if you can see on the screen. Again, what are our thoughts on it? Because that is again proposed for residential. So if our position is that this site or another site should be kept free for health or some element of health, that's something we should consider. So I'll leave it there for now and then see what other people's thoughts are.
Yeah. Councillor Knight.
I've thought a little bit more about what I said before, and it feels like what we should object in both of these cases is the proposed change of use. So the current use is either a use class C commercial business use with a focus on healthcare, or it's local community and learning. And I think, it's very important to everyone here that those sorts of facilities are within walking distances of people's homes and not on some new site that's way away from the centre of the town. And if we allow the change of use to residential, then basically we get this awful infill development and there's nothing left for community services, for healthcare, for local learning or anything like that. So I think really the best grounds, we can't stop development on those sites, but we do not want to see a change of use. And the current change of use is what we should argue to retain.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Strawn.
I think an interesting point about both these sites, that they're in public ownership in the sense that the hospital site, as I understand it, owned by a sector of the NHS. The London Road site, I believe, is owned by CBC. Therefore, they are effectively community assets. So if the hospital site was going to be redeveloped for a big profit for the health board, they should be reinvesting that money within Biggleswade in some form or another. Again, with the CBC site, that is a public asset. And again, that might be suitable for community use or something like that. And maybe one of those sites, the community London Road site, might be able to cater for a hospital or something like that. But they're both in the public ownership, unlike others where there's lots of private ownership around. But if we've got a hospital site that is in the NHS, the money that's got to come, it's got to come back to Biggleswade in one form or another, hopefully in terms of better facilities. Whether that falls within the scope of the call for sites is another matter. But I think these issues are things that CBC need to be aware of when they're looking at how they're going to do it. And if they should decide that they should be developed, then it's important that the appropriate conditions are put on to ensure that those assets are used for the benefit of Biggleswade. Whether that's feasible or not is another matter, but it's not.
No, but it's no, sadly. But I mean, I think just again, speaking from the chair in terms of the 136312 London Road site, I mean, I had a walk up there fairly recently, and the site actually goes back a lot further than I think people realise. We call it London Road, but actually it comes all the way through to Mead End, and there's various semi-derelict buildings that were used by Bedfordshire County Council. It goes back that far in terms of the ownership and use. And of course, there are playing fields from Biggleswade Academy that are put onto it and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of land there, and I think there could be lots of uses for it in terms of public benefit or whatever you want to call it, because of the way it links up kind of to connecting areas, if you like. But so I think that's an important factor. It isn't just got one, it's not facing just one direction. It's actually facing kind of two, and it already sits alongside some green spaces and public land as it is. Councillor Whittaker.
So London Road, obviously Preen would love to be on London Road, but also from a town council perspective, in terms of your aspirations, I mean, you could also we talk about for community use, you could think about putting citizens' advice there next to Preen, for example. And then I know Ivor Valley would love to have their facility currently only runs up to 18, 19 years old. So actually they'd love to have the next stage. So actually they could have a facility, a relatively small facility for children or for young people that are up to 25. And then in terms of having a site that is useful, is for community use, but is more stuff that you could have some residential. But I would be saying more like a step up accommodation for young people so that they're learning how to have their own homes, that sort of thing. So it is development and it is homes, but it's not rows and rows of houses that are the same. So it's still that community use, as Mark said. So I think for me, you're right about the change of use. It's making sure it has community benefit, because lots more houses is not community benefit. And that site, both of those sites, as have been said, those are the last two real bits in the centre of town that are accessible. And the key other message when you're writing your feedback to CBC is to talk about sustainability. And that's one of the things that will be discussed when the local plan goes to examination. The primary reason it goes to examination is, are these sustainable sites? And if we're asking people to drive all the way out to places, that's not sustainable.
Okay, all right, that's a fair point. Councillor Foster.
It's a good point. I think I don't know the intentionally made the point about being the centre of the town, but actually, if you look at where it is effectively, when you start looking at the map, it is pretty much going to be the centre of the town. So I think there's merit for it being a combination of uses actually on that site. So not restricted to purely residential. So it's a site that can be set aside for some residential, but some community use. And I think that's probably where we should go. So aiming to have the type of things that Councillor Whittaker's referring to.
Yeah.
But it's not solely residential.
Okay, great. Mark, sorry, Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I guess I'll just make the point. I think that sort of weakens our argument. So if you think about a smaller Biggleswade, a certain proportion of the land was set aside for healthcare, for educational use, for welfare. I'll make up a number, say that was 10%. Now, as Biggleswade grows and gets 50% larger, you would hope that percentage of land that was used for community use would stay the same. And if we allow any of these plots that are currently used for that purpose to be subdivided and used for residential, not only is the amount of land allocated for that use proportionately smaller anyway because of the size of Biggleswade growing, but you're making it further still. So I would say no residential there. That whole site, in my mind, needs to be used for the same category of use it's used today as a community resource. And we shouldn't allow any housing on that sort of site.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
It's all right. Well, that's what we're having this discussion now. I mean, we've not.
The whole point of this really is
Exactly.
because you
Exactly.
will have an exchange of views, and just because I've got a view on it, I mean, ultimately it's about what the town council response is on this.
Yeah.
And this is, I think it's a healthy thing to us to discuss. I think more importantly on this is actually for us to be seen to be discussing things and for residents to see
Yeah.
that we're discussing it. We've got our ward members here and having their involvement as well. So we're looking at this in the first time that we've really done it in this way. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, absolutely. And this is what we wanted this evening, to have a open discussion and you know, we'll see where we get to, and we'll pull things together towards the end. But I think we should have, you know, more conversations about some of the other sites.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at London Road. We may come back to it, but we've had a discussion already. Were there any other key ones, Councillor Foster, that you wanted to raise at this stage? And I can maybe open it up if colleagues want to raise any others, or.
I thought that perhaps the next one probably should be land north of Biggleswade, purely because of the fact that we've got the Person Hall at the moment that's going through with Persimmon, but we've also got two other sites that are being put forward. So I think if we go there, then sort of work our way around. I think up to other members, but I'd like to discuss really what the thoughts are on Person Hall Farm. So we're talking about 13669, 679 and 623. What's the general feeling about those areas there?
Councillor Strawn, go on. It's all right.
Can I just profess ignorance in the sense that there's a gap between the two sites there? Have I missed something, or what is in that space at the moment?
There is
Go on, Councillor Foster.
in that site, and I think I'm right in saying there's nothing in the local plan yet. There's not a site that's put forward, I don't think, but obviously there are other members that may know differently.
Councillor Whitaker, do you want to comment?
I'm just wondering, isn't there some archaeology there that can't be disturbed?
That may well be the case.
That's possible, yes. I think they would.
So the reason I'm saying that is because when Land North came forward, they were going to do off-site biodiversity net gain, and they couldn't do it right next door. It had to be way up. And I think the reason they couldn't was because there was archaeology and historic stuff in the ground. So it was going to be way up. Now they're going to do it on site. So I think that's the only reason that's making me say that.
Okay, Councillor Fade, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think we have to think really carefully about what green space remains in Biggleswade, because the common and encroachment on the common is very much a thing.
Yeah.
We have the land between Biggleswade and Langford. We have some land to the east of the railway line as you get out towards the wind turbines. You're going to have pockets of greenery in Land East. You've got the River Ivel and then stuff north of Biggleswade. That's it. There isn't really any green space left within the parish. I've never supported development to the north of Biggleswade. Frankly, the way these developers at the moment are behaving, I'm even less persuaded than I think I have ever been that it's the right thing for the town. So personally, those two which border the current Land North site and the Blore Bellaway estate, I would be very, very reluctant to include as that view out towards Sandy and the Common. We have to preserve what is left. In terms of the one just south of the waterworks, I would actually rather boil my own head than include that. I think that is completely inappropriate to have some sort. How are you going to get access to that?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's just down a farm track at best.
Landowners aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I'll go for it.
Go on then, Councillor Foster.
I don't like to play devil's advocate, but why not?
Go on.
I actually am in agreement here, by the way. I think certainly I'm not quite going as far as Councillor Fajan boiling my head, but I think that particular site is entirely inappropriate and should be rejected out of hand. The other two, I'm of the same view, but perhaps less so. But I'm still of the same view that those aren't appropriate. But if I were fence sitting, I could see more of an argument for that than that one. Yes. But going back to my previous comments around 136620, I would be saying if we had to have one or the other, I would be saying 136620 rather than these two. But that doesn't say So for the same reason, because the impact on traffic would be, I think, more affected by these two rather than 136620. That's my position on it. But that doesn't mean I support either of them. I would say we should be pushing against those one and not be supporting any further expansion north of the town.
Okay. Councillor Whitaker.
I will stick my head in the same pan as Grant's for 623. I'm going to put a realistic head on here. Land North, they are building a link road that goes from that development to the King's Reach roundabout. They would not let them build that, and they would not be building that link road if they were not planning to put houses on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And that means that when that comes to inspection, that will be viewed very favourably because that's classed as infrastructure, right? They've put the infrastructure in first. They're going to have to put that in for part of Land North, which was going to make 669 and to a lesser extent 679 more attractive to the inspector and to CBC. If they weren't building that access road, I totally agree with you, Mark. I think you could blow it out of the water, but I think that access road makes it really hard to be as strong as you are currently feeling. And I'm not saying I want it because I absolutely don't. And I totally agree, like I say, about 623. I just think I can see it going through, and is it better to make it as good as it can be? And I don't necessarily even think that. I can see it going through. I can see it going through. So how do you fight it?
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Councillor Knight.
I'm going to go back to that VAT that everyone's got their heads in.
Yeah, it's getting big.
So I think the problem we have here is that actually it's more like a frog in the vat, and if you heat it up gradually, it doesn't realise. And that's the problem. Each time we build a few more houses, well, you can always build a few more, and the impact is always acceptable on the road transport infrastructure. No one can argue about one house. Well, what about two? Well, what about five? Here we've got 400 odd coming, a little under, and we know it's going to be awful. The problem with the new access road is that doesn't work if you don't want to go through King's Reach and along Baden Powell. And if you actually want to go into the centre of Biggleswade, you're going to come out of that new estate and turn right and end up on Potton Road. And we know, then you get the junction with London Road, or you get the Potton Road bridge, and it just doesn't work. So I understand what you're saying, and there will be that view that access road solves all the problems, but it really doesn't. So we have to find a way to stop this poor frog being boiled alive, because once they've been built, you can't ever unbuild them.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
I agree with you because I don't like it. I'm just trying to say, how do you object in a way against those sites in a way that will carry enough weight that it won't even get in front of an inspector? And right now, I don't know is what I'm trying to say. And so I agree with you, they shouldn't be built, but we've got to give some thought about how that's objected to, because I actually think if it gets in front of an inspector, we're in trouble. So we've got to do it strongly first.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Straw and then Councillor Fage.
I think Councillor Whitaker's arguments are very strong, and I think this is the danger with that. And I think that whilst we may not want it, I think that of all the developments, because of the road, if the road's going in there, I think it's going to be very difficult to beat the planning inspector in that respect. There may be other sites that we would be better looking at and fighting at this stage. And when we've had an overall conclusion, come back and work out which are the lesser of the many evils.
Yeah, no, well, that's right. I think Councillor Straw, I don't think there's anyone in the room who particularly wants the Land North development. So I think we can take that as a given. But equally, I think there's an element of pragmatism having to emerge this evening, possibly. But Councillor Fage.
I guess my question is, what do we want to and need to include in our response? So if it is just the headline that we object to development north of Biggleswade, then I think that's relatively straightforward and probably has consensus. If we need to get a level deeper and say why, to what extent do we explain that? You think we do? Okay, here's my attempt. So
Go on.
So firstly, I do think this will only have credibility, presumably, if we support some residential elsewhere, wherever that may be. So access to pretty much any supermarket would need, or the major supermarkets in town would go via Potton Road. and rather than using the so-called relief road. We also know from discussions with, as a result of Land East and the design forum that we've been working through, but particularly on the strategic side, outside of the red line of that development of 1,500 houses, there are still challenges with getting to the A1. It's not every junction, but it is some of them, and the queue will be as long as it's going to be, because the flow is only as good as the tightest part, and there are a couple of roundabouts there where it's not actually, we might just about mitigate it, but any more on top of that using those roads is going to be a challenge. So if their answer is Baden-Powell Way and coming south, there are arguments against that as well. Thirdly, I do think you have encroachment on the common, loss of green space. You have the cycle route through to Sandy, which is nationally recognised, encroachment on the potentially important archaeology as well. So all of those things taken together, that is as good a case as I can make off the top of my head, but there are other reasons.
Okay, that's pretty good. Councillor Foster?
I think it's about as good a case she's going to get, actually. And I don't disagree with it at all, with the point that if there's an access road being proposed, we've got to come up with a very strong argument, and that's as good as we're going to get. So,
okay.
Just as a slightly take you in a slightly different direction. One of the things that CBC have asked for, first of all, can I just do strategic sites? So strategic site, it's to accommodate a scale and significance, accommodates major significant development, such as large, sustainable, mixed-use expansions, new settlements, or significant standalone employment options, often using a size threshold of above 10 hectares, if for an employment, for example. Regional or local impact, capable of absorbing substantial growth in housing numbers. I don't know how you define substantial growth, or economic investment of regional and local importance. Infrastructure integration, so designed to incorporate major supporting infrastructure from the initial phases, including roads, schools, green spaces, and low carbon energy solutions. And because we now have the supergrid, they will feel that that element is covered. And then does it fit in with all the other parts of the local plan? So that's why it's a strategic site. What they're asking us to do, what they're asking you to do, is to say, of all of these sites, which are the few that are the least offensive to you? So to a certain extent, if we all agree that those Land North sites are head boilers, right, for whatever reason, we just say they're definitely not going to be in our preferred ones that you're going to put forward, and concentrate on the other ones. Because I think, regardless of your reasons, I think you can just say, we're never going to want to support those. I still think you're going to want to put something in saying why you don't, and really, really strongly, because you don't want to leave it to them to just say, well, we can still put it in. That road worries me. It really worries me.
No. Yeah. Understood. Okay.
shall we move on to
We'll
the next
move
one?
on, yes, please.
So-
I know I'll try and bring some of this back shortly once we've had a run round some of the others as well.
So I'm going to move further west then. So the other side of the railway, we've got a smaller proposed plot north of the Fairfield estate, and a plot that is essentially as part of Fairfield House or around that area. I'll open it up for people to talk. Scott, Hayley, so who's first? I don't know.
Okay, Councillor Whitaker.
I think both of those sites impact on the Kersley for Grade 2 listed building.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Any other?
Which is referenced in the neighbourhood plan.
Okay. Any other comments on that one?
Okay.
Go on then.
I think of the sites that are proposed, probably those two are at the lowest, highest. I'm against those more than I perhaps am against some of the others. Partly because of where it sits within the back end of the Fairfield estate, partly because of the fact that you're right next to a listed building, and the access through to the town. So those two particularly, I think, are probably not viable, and we should be completely against those two. I can see arguments for some of the others that we've already spoken about, but these two I can't see a really strong argument for at all.
Okay. Thank
May,
you.
may I just add
Sure.
considerable flooding problems around some of those northern parts of the Fairfield estate, and I doubt thousands of tons of concrete are going to make that better.
No, that's a fair point.
I
Yeah.
mean, bear in mind, one of those that 136,500 is the site to the immediate north of Biggleswade United Football Club. And obviously the town council has in its charitable status in relation to the cricket club has sort of rights over the essentially the access to that area. So it's a very narrow road up to the site. So there's restrictions there. I think my personal view is we shouldn't be entertaining even any conversations around that site, and our response should be it's a no-go from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Go on, Councillor Wiscombe.
When you respond to this, I think it has to come in levels. So I think you almost need to set out and say, on the first level, Biggleswade is constrained by its river and by the access to the A1 by these two routes, and then potentially you've got another route through Millow coming through, but that's not within Biggleswade zone limits. And actually that defines where any development can be and where your objections are going to arise from, because it's an infrastructure, coming back, Duncan, to your point, it's an infrastructure issue. We can't get over the fact that that's what constrains Biggleswade is the access to the A1 and those points. And the roads getting to that, my understanding is, can't really be made any better because they are what they are. So any significant development above that that's already been committed needs to address that in order to be sustainable. So that's your first level. Then I think you say, and I think you can say from the conversation we've just had, anything north, you don't like it. And the reason you don't like it is because it can't get access to the A1 in any direction in a sustainable fashion. And then you say, and to the east it can because this, and because it's got access to via Millow and these sort of things. And then so I take it in a headlines, areas, and then each site in turn, because I think you can rule out a whole area that way. And I think you can give a really strong argument.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good. That's good.
That's good. No, I appreciate the setting the scene around the constraints, and I don't think maybe that's perhaps entirely understood at Central Bed. So I think that's worth reiterating. Okay, do you want
You're making a very key point there. Some of the, I think what we've experienced over the recent weeks really is that there's perhaps a lack of understanding around the constraints, but also when you've got local knowledge and local involvement in some of the things, you actually make things better. And I think that's the point really, is just trying to make sure that we're doing this thoroughly to get our really strong points across.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on then.
I was going to say the next one is actually outside of the Biggleswade ward, but as we're up in the north of the town, you've got this site, the employment site to the east, to the west of the Ivel, to the north of Sainsbury's. It's not Biggleswade, so nothing really to do with us, but I don't know whether anybody wants to make any comment, or we just say, for me, I don't think there's any reason to object to it. I think it's not an unreasonable one, but I don't know what other people's views are.
Which one is that, Mark? Is that 136?
136275.
275, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Just one comment from me. I think that's like the worst possible floodplain ever, but I'll just double check. So I know it'll get through because it's in a massive floodplain.
I don't disagree with that, but if you're talking about access,
Yeah.
If there were a site, I mean, you can't use anything. There'd have to be another strong argument for not using it. And if it is the floodplain, that's fine. But in terms of proximity to the A1, I think and it's not ours to comment on anyway.
Well, I think it's pretty much opposite the tidy tip, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically that kind of slightly unloved bit of land across there behind Sainsbury's petrol station. But yeah, Councillor Fage.
Can I just say, I think we should be confident in commenting on developments outside of this parish. There are, how many villages and towns are there outside of Biggleswade? We've got 10 parishes that border us, and all of them, any development there uses shared infrastructure. So, even if it's out of parish, for me, I think we should comment on it in the same way as if it were.
Well, and that was, sorry, Mark, yeah, I'll look. I mean, that's what I said in my opening remarks, saying that there are a number. I was referring more to the larger sites like 136, 620, but equally it can apply to others that where essentially other parishes or villages are sort of, it's my phrase, no one else is piggybacking kind of on the sort of Biggleswade kind of resources and facilities. And that, that might be okay, but it's just something we need to think about in terms of, way we approach some of these things, because it's all well and good protecting other areas, rural nature, but then how does that square with ours? But go on.
I was just going to make, you're right, and we should be commenting on it. So perhaps it wasn't quite clear. That's perhaps what I was referring to here is that it's a relatively small site, and I don't think it's significant enough to be a problem. So I think the reason I've opened the map up now is because I think it's probably worth us, perhaps at this point, thinking around sort of the bigger picture and what is, which areas might be areas we want to focus on. Because you talked about the areas outside the town. And for example, 136277, which is a combined residential and employment site of 305 acres. It's a massive site. I think we should be commenting on that one because it will have if that does go ahead, it will have a big impact on the town. So I'd like to go there first and then sit up next and see what people's thoughts are. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah, Councillor Whitaker.
Just on the last one, and it's the same for these other ones as well, but even on that last little diddy one, Sainsbury's roundabout is already over capacity.
Yeah.
And that's not going to help.
Yeah.
It's also in floodplain, but it's not going to help. And all of the other ones on the other side are going to only make that capacity issue worse. And so I still think you can say anything to the north, no, quite frankly.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on the, I guess on the kind of, I'll call it the North Hill cluster for want of a better word, but any of the other sites there or specifically on 136277, which is 300 hectares, which is quite a chunk, but does cover much of the quarry near Broome and others. So I'm not quite sure what they've got in mind for that, but yeah, okay, go on.
So I suppose I've just had a realisation that they've put that forward for residential and employment because it's going to back onto Holm Farm. So they'll see it as an extension of the Holm Farm development. So you could see it starting as employment and then becoming residential, couldn't you, as it gets closer to the lakes and further away from Holm Farm. So it sounds huge, but if a huge chunk of it is employment, it kind of would make sense. However, in terms of loss of public amenity, I hate it. But I don't know if you were being. So strategically, it makes sense, is what I'm trying to say. It's next to the A1. It's going to be next to Holm Farm, which is going to be a massive employment site. It's just the next step up on the A1. I suppose if I was playing devil's advocate, I'd say, why not?
Can I just question back? What do you mean in terms of public amenity? You mentioned loss of public amenity. What in particular?
I know a lot of people walk their dogs and, they use it for for recreation, and that's public amenity. So loss of public amenity.
Okay. So I know a lot of it is obviously owned by tarmac and, quarry and whatever. So I was kind of thinking it's not necessarily in the public domain, but no, it's fair point in terms of, I guess, nature use, but I know a lot of it is owned by other people. Councillor Facian.
I think we need to think about our town's envelope, and the A1 is the boundary, really, certainly on the southern side for development. So whilst this might be out of parish, to my earlier point, this would be dependent on all of Biggleswade's roads, all of Biggleswade's services. There is nothing out east. What are they going to do? They're going to go to the Black Horse Island occasionally. That's lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
But in reality, day to day, they're using our infrastructure. They're using Hill Lane. They're going to the land to the north of Biggleswade roundabout, which is already over capacity. Development envelopes, I think, is something that should feature in our response.
Okay, all right. Councillor Strawn.
I think we've got to look at generally the coalescence that's the danger of occurring, and also the practicalities, because the road system, equally, that won't cope with a development of that size. With the A1, we have enough difficulty at the Hill Lane junction of the A1 at the northern roundabout. And this is just going to increase traffic to such an extent. The A1 itself, a national highway, won't cope. Forget any, and Biggleswade town couldn't cope with it. It might be very good for business in one respect, but that is if you could ever get into Biggleswade from these sites.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, councillor Knight.
Thank you. As Councillor Whitaker says, this site has some things in its favour. I think, it's very reasonable to object to it swallowing up Broome, which it effectively would, which would cease to exist as a rule. There's a whole amenity point because that whole area, the walks, and the nature walks, that would be a huge loss. But I think really the problem here is actually, and I don't know how you respond in this way, but you just can't think about little parcels of land for employment and residential use without thinking strategically. And we know the A1 roundabouts need to be replaced. Therefore, the A1 needs to be rerouted. And I don't really see how you can consider sites that large in isolation without knowing what the plan is to reroute the A1. And if the plan is to put the A1 through the middle of it, that has a big impact. So is the A1 going to go to the east or to the west of Biggleswade? And you just can't separate them. And it's not joined up thinking to even try and do something of that scale. If you know you're going to address the A1 by taking it to the, the west of that site, or through the middle of that site, then you could probably do it. But you can't do it without knowing what that plan is.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lack of information at this stage to come to a conclusion. Okay, councillor Page.
Just a general point around these kind of sites. When Councillor Whitaker was talking about sort of our headlines, I think one that needs to be right up there is about coalescence, because as Tempsford comes forward, you actually look, we call it Tempsford, it's not Tempsford, it stretches out to Eltersley and down to Potton and Gamlingame.
Yeah.
So, if we can't be treated in that way, we need countryside gaps, or we will coalesce with our villages around us, which I don't think is acceptable. So I think that needs to be a headline, particularly for sites like this.
Okay. All right.
We'll move on then.
Good. We'll move on, and then I think if Councillor Foster's got some more to share with us, and then we can try and.
Well, I think we've got the areas that are to the east of Upper Caldicot, so to the north of the Hill Lane, so 136,519, 136,691. You're talking about coalescence. I mean, effectively that there's a danger that it gets closer and closer to Biggleswade. At what point where does it stop? So I think probably those ones need some sort of comment. Obviously, we've got employment sites there already, but there's a combination of residential that's being proposed as other, which isn't clear at the moment that what that's referred to, but it's not residential right up to the A1 that's being suggested, but residential to the north of the road there to again back in onto Upper Caldicot. So again, impact on the A1. What's our thoughts on that one? Or do we leave that one for now?
We could park that one. I think it's. It's
not for us.
Yeah, it isn't. But I think Councillor Fager's point about putting pressure on Hill Lane in particular, which we know is a bit of a choke point, and the roundabout and so on is worth noting. And obviously the blank bit north of 136,691 is already in existence with the uni snacks and all the rest of it, the different businesses that are there. So
I'll just say on this. So my guess is that. So if you're going to bring forward 136,691, I don't think you could do that without having a clear plan for your incremental impact on the A1 North roundabout. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
And probably something around Hill Lane as well, given the length of those queues. I think just, again, bigger picture, we're going to see developments come forward, and we're already seeing it with Land East, providing some funding or a little bit of land for their incremental impact, but bigger picture, these A1 roundabouts need to form part of our response properly if we're to take any more housing or employment in my view. So I'll leave that one there.
Okay, I've got Councillor Strawn and then Councillor Whitaker.
Just following on the point about Caldicot, we've already referred to the bigger site. The impact on Biggleswade is an infrastructure one, because would these sites have, say, health services, etc., for them? So anything outside just because it's outside the parish doesn't mean it isn't going to impact on the quality of existence in Biggleswade, because we'll be having to probably end up being expected to support those areas as well. And so we have got a vested interest, not only from a coalescence point of view and trying to keep ourselves as separate from the new Milton Keynes coming to the north of Biggleswade, but it's just a spread, and it's the way it's going. We could see the Thamesford development actually swamping us round all sides if all these developments go ahead.
Yes, no, that's right. I mean, I know there isn't, for example, a doctor's surgery in Northville or Ickwell, so already. So unless there's plans within this, which I don't know if there is, you're quite right. It's going to put pressure in different ways on Biggleswade itself. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Foster. Sorry, Councillor Whitaker and Councillor Foster. Sorry.
I just want to caution about us using health as a planning reason, because it's not a planning reason. So we have to be really careful. So although I don't disagree with you at all, can't use health, can't use schools, can use roads. So I think just be really careful, because even putting it in, although it's important and we feel we want to put it in, even though we know it doesn't count for anything, it sometimes dilutes your message if you do put it in. And sometimes it's better to just go in with really solid, good planning reasons as to why you don't. And I think with the road infrastructure the way it is, I think you have got really good planning reasons. We have got great planning reasons why we don't want these developments. So just be careful we don't dilute the message is what I want to say. And coalescence, hoping, Mark, that you're going to come on to Langford in a second. So that was all I
I
wanted
think
to
we're
ask.
moving our way around. So in a sort of geographical way. No, I take your point from the chair about health services. I was merely reflecting residents' concerns rather than actually rather than accepting as a planning reason. But it is something that obviously comes up in conversations and debates locally, and also issues like the fire service and things like that, which getting more and more call outs now, partly because there's more people and more things happening, and they're feeling the pressure and so on and so forth. So it's lots of different ways. So okay,
I'm just going to make one point, and I think you touched on it. I think we're alluding to anyway, where there's lots of developments coming forward. What we should be aiming to do is to get the developers that come forward. This is obviously a call for sites conversation, but any developments that come forward, we should be aiming for the developers to be working together so that we get the best thing for the town. And that might be to do with funding north and south roundabouts. It might be some other road improvements. And I think that's a priority really for us, because essentially any development that comes forward has the same constraints. It has Biggleswade North, Biggleswade South, and probably Potton Road and Shortmead Street and Sun Street to the north, and the Saxon Drive and London Road roundabout to the south. So if we can get the developers working together, it's not an ideal, but it's a funding thing. But then we've got to get central beds working to actually provide the right level of support for that. I'm working with Highways England, but I think it's important that goes on the record, and we obviously are trying to work to get that together. So,
thank you.
You're right that. Go on,
Councillor Whitaker.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, we are all expecting surely that the government are going to come for a visit any day soon up to Thamesford and announce Thamesford, and we've all said, if they're going to do Thamesford, they need to sort out the roundabouts on the A1, and those conversations that have been going on, as we know, at different levels for quite some time. And I'd expect the two to come hand in hand. My concern is, if as a council you respond, or we respond as this is the current status quo, we've got roundabouts, and this is why we don't like this and this and this, and then they just come back, you get an announcement that comes 3 days or whatever after you've submitted it's closed, the consultation is closed. You've only got a view of what you would like if the roundabouts were still there. And I have a feeling, I'm pretty sure by the time this comes to examination, those announcements will have been made. I'll be very surprised if there isn't something around the A1 roundabouts. I don't think developers' contributions would be enough to fund it. I think it would have to be government contributions. So it would have to come from even higher up. So do you therefore want to do a response that is, if the roundabouts on the A1 remain as they currently are, this is our response. And if the roundabouts on the A1 were to be bypassed in some way, this is our response, because I do think it changes the picture completely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Foster?
That's really helpful because you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I think actually we should have both. And you're also right, at some point in the not too distant future, they've got to do something about both of those roundabouts.
Yeah.
And the A1 is an entire, whether that means that completely relocating the A1, it's unlikely at this stage, obviously. They've got to do something with Biggleswade North, Biggleswade South in some form.
My worry is the times.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to play against Biggleswade.
Yeah. Okay. I think we'll move now on to Langford.
Yeah.
So you can see here in the middle of the screen.
Anti-clockwise, huh?
In the middle of the screen here, we've got an employment site that is immediately to the west of Home Farm. I think I'm right in saying, but you've also got a couple of residential sites that are backing onto Home Court Avenue to the south of the A1, to the east of Langford Road. So there's that. But you've got a couple of other sites there, but obviously, again, a Gypsy and Traveller site and then more residential in Langford. So again, what's the thoughts on those?
Councillor Page?
I think to reiterate our points around coalescence, we have very little green space left in Biggleswade. We don't want to swallow up Langford. The other thing to add is their route in to Biggleswade, which is their service centre, is Hitchin Street, which is not a lot of fun. So we, in my opinion, should be including a very firm response on these sites, everything south of the A1 there. I should declare an interest. I live just off of Hitchin Street, but this is a very long held view of mine.
Okay. Okay.
I think if all of those sites were built out, we would coalesce with Langford.
Yep.
It's that simple. So just no, just no. And the thing is, like, I know that the site to the east is basically, there were a few sites, I think, if I remember correctly, within it. And I think they're basically saying the compound around Cow Close and all of that area that's currently being used by Network Rail as a temporary site, they kind of want to make it a permanent site. There was always the danger of that. And but I think that in combination with all the other bits, and given what's, you know, in Langford and up through Henlow, they've got a lot of development along this road. They will, and it's housing development, it's residential development. So I think you would just coalesce.
Yeah.
And I suppose there is a question to be asked of CBC. Do they see Biggleswade coalescing with any surrounding towns and villages as part of the local plan? Because every direction we're going in here, we're saying the same thing, aren't we? Coalesce. And is that, are they kind of going to go, well, actually, we don't mind if you coalesce with Langford, it was always part of our plan? I hope not, but you know.
Well, I mean, my only thought on that is, I know Councillor Foster did a lot of work on the local government review last year that wasn't. And it was very clear that some parishes had thought that that might happen and others thought it might not happen and had different and strong views on that. So whether that's CBC's thoughts, I don't know, but it's, I think other residents might have some views on that as well. But can I just make a point of clarification on the Cow Close issue? That's 136305, isn't it?
You've got
And not-
136312 and 1363.
That's the whole
So
calculation,
there
yeah.
are two. One is 6.88
Yeah.
or whatever it is, and 1 is 1.05.
And that's presently being used by Network Rail, isn't it? At the
But
moment?
ultimately, they'll
Yeah.
both be, they're both proposed for residential.
Okay.
I'm entirely in agreement with these not being supported for any form of development. And that applies to 136344 as well. And the same actually for the employment site 136739. I think the problem with that one is again, it's the coalescence element. It's trying to put up a strong enough argument against it, given that Central Beds are effectively selling Home Farm for employment, and at some point that's already it's already in the plan. So
Yeah.
We've got to put a strong argument against 136739. And what is that argument other than coalescence?
Councillor Faysh.
I'll have a go at that. I'll have a go
Great.
at that as well. So there is the coalescence argument. If you look at that green corridor is one of the out towards the wind turbines is one of the very few remaining green corridors, and it is the closest green space closest accessible green space. It's not like an enclosed park like Highlands for.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say at least about a quarter of the town.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
So when you
Definitely.
think about you're divided there by the railway, so that green corridor is vital. So I would put that on top of the argument around coalescence. We not off the record, but I don't know whether it features in our response, but we still don't know what that A1 South roundabout looks like. They're going to put a new, potentially, well, there will have to be a new arm if that roundabout stays in its current form. That scale of development before we have a plan for what the A1 South roundabout looks like is totally premature. So and one more, our new favourite word, sustainability. How do you get there? You've got some overgrown bridleway from the railway station, which I think even CBC accept is it's not in line with LTM 120. It's nowhere near wide enough to get cycles down both ways. So how do you access a development of that scale?
Yeah. Absolutely. Councillor Agnew.
I'll just also add on to what you were saying by mentioning that we probably didn't use the word or expression environmental degradation, and that could be used for any places where the green places were being encroached onto, because we've mentioned already water stress and flooding risks, but we didn't probably mention habitat loss. And I don't know, this is probably the weakest of the arguments, but still has to be mentioned. And also because I'll need to go, and I did excuse myself, the loss of local character as one of the arguments. So I basically put three: environmental degradation, infrastructure strain, and loss of local character. I'll take the picture and send to one of you. Otherwise, I have to go to work.
No, that's fine, Councillor Agnew. You've already mentioned it to me, so that's fine.
I'll just pick up on your point while we're here about the loss of environmental. I think that's really important. And I'm sure as part of your local plan, your neighbourhood plan, you will have done some sort of survey of the amazing species that we have in our local area. And I think you need to pull on that as your part of your argument for some of these sites. So I think you've probably already got all the data there to support your points. So I think that is a great point, and we've not mentioned it before. But I would also say in regards to these sites, if you're more accepting, and personally I am more accepting of the sites next to the A1, the employment sites next to the A1, bearing in mind the A1 corridor is just going to become warehousing and employment. If you're more accepting of that, then you can say, well, actually, we're accepting of that because we don't like that bit between Langford and Biggleswade, and because the highway infrastructure can't cope. Loss of character is great, and all of the other reasons that we said, coalescence. But I think you're not saying no to everything. You're just saying that's better, and accepting that the A1 is going to become that corridor.
Okay.
I think there's some strong arguments, really strong arguments against that particular site. 136 says 79, as has been discussed. I think that's probably a key one for us for the reasons spoken about. Shall we move on then we'll move across to then the employment sites to the south of Biggleswade, so 136551, and then we've got 136576, which is in Potham Ward. What's the general feeling on those? I'll go on this if you don't.
Go on, Councillor Foster.
If there's going to be employment sites within the town, we've got industry, we've got warehouses. I don't like the fact that we've got the sort of prime entrance point into the town is warehousing, but we are where we are, and I think how much are we going to change that? It's for me is a least worst option having warehousing to the east of the town and the south of the town there than having it other areas. So I would be grudgingly accepting, but the issue is, again, as we've had before, it's where does the traffic from this site go? And we've talked about Haley about the access, and that we've got the Edworth Junction and the access onto the A1. If any of these sites come forward for development, there needs to be improvement in the road network around the south of the town for safety. Otherwise, you're effectively bringing traffic back up into the town through Biggleswade, north roundabout, which is already at capacity.
Go on, councillor Fage.
My concern with that, so I don't disagree. If it's going somewhere here, is the least worst option potentially. What is worrying me is this is a very long way from residential. It's not as though this is in proximity really to where people live. It's hard enough to get people to cycle or walk to the Stratton Business Park as it is, and even a slight increase in connectivity there, even if you improve connectivity within sort of to the current Stratton Business Park, this is still, if you're going down to basically the water tower and that bridge, which is where that ends up, I think, if I'm following the roads correctly. It's not happening. Sorry, middle of January, rain's coming down with a nice easterly wind smashing you in the side of the face while you're on your bike. Impossible, not happening. So I'm not saying yes or no yet, but sustainability has to feature in this because we've got to get people out of their cars and get into work.
Councillor Knight.
I'm sorry to disagree. So I think Biggleswade today, we have more people living here than working here. Therefore, most people work somewhere else and many people commute to London. So, frankly, having more employment opportunities in a zoned area adjacent to Biggleswade, which means fewer people have to go to London on the train, which is pretty much at capacity, can actually, potentially take a bus that's now only £2.50. If there are any buses, it sounds like a win to me. So I don't think you could really make the proximity argument when most people are commuting to London or Cambridge.
I think, just speaking for the chair, one of the things I don't disagree with Councillor Fage's suggestions around sustainability. I think it probably is the least worst option having them on this site, in a sense that you've got a concentration then in one place of employment or warehousing or whatever it ends up being. And for those of us that have visited that site, it is a very green, in inverted commas, site in terms of photovoltaic tiles and so on and so forth. So I think it's about as green as it could be in terms of having warehousing. But I guess an upside of having more people working there is potentially you could then have subsidised bus service, which might be more beneficial because more people might be using it and so on. And I know that the owners of the existing site have been looking into that, and I think they do even subsidise at the moment some almost private bus services to bring people into the site. It's not a perfect solution, but there may be something about economies of scale there, perhaps, if it were to grow, that could seek or give you the reassurance that you're seeking about sustainability. But you're quite right, it is a hell of a long way from London Road all the way down to the water tower in inverted commas, or you're almost in kind of Edworth Village or whatever at the extreme point. So, but it does seem a more natural fit to have it there than perhaps some of the other sites we've discussed this evening. But that's just a personal view. Councillor Whittaker.
I just want to encourage us all, and me included, because we've all sat here tonight and talked about different sites, and we've talked about Biggleswade as is now. This local plan goes up to 2050 and we've got Thamesford coming. I suspect Biggleswade and everywhere else is going to look very different by 2050. And I also think if we were being ambitious around Thamesford, we'd be saying we want some sort of light rapid transport system coming down the A1, because these employment sites, big employment sites, they're not going to be just getting people from Biggleswade, they're going to be getting people from all down the A1. And if that's the case, I agree with you, Grant, it needs to be sustainable. So, okay, government, give us a light rapid transport system. And then all of a sudden Home Farm becomes much better. And actually, this is at the moment we are thinking about Biggleswade now, and I think to a certain extent we have got to think about Biggleswade in 30 years' time. And that's really hard because we love Biggleswade now and we don't want to think of it changing. But we also need to think of it that way because we have to be ambitious. So we could say, we don't mind that, providing a suitable transport system is provided so that the A1 doesn't become completely clogged. And I think it's okay to put that in your response. So I just wanted to encourage us to think more ambitiously.
Fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Strong.
Well, I'm struggling to think 30 years ahead because if I'm here, it'll be quite a miracle. But in that respect, I think we have got to look to the future. But in that, there's no point in these developments taking place if it isn't future proofed in the sense of getting there. Because certainly, if one looks at how one would access this employment site at present, there is no easy access as things stand. It would need some kind of amendment from the A1, and then how would it get into Biggleswade with the system? So it needs the forward planning there. So I don't think we can necessarily object to the principle of the development here, but what it is a difficulty is looking so that it is actually developed on a viable scale so that people can move around and get in and out of it, because at the moment there is no easy answer. The A1 South roundabout is inappropriate and it would be mean going through an existing industrial estate, etc. The other point would be coming off at the Edworth turn effectively, and that is again creating difficulties over access, etc. And I think Councillor Whittaker's point about if their Thamesford does come to fruition, we've got to get the benefits from that for the town in as many ways as we can, because we've been talking about coalescence, and we look at the sites to the northeast of the town. That is going to coalesce with the new Thamesford, I think, unless we're very careful.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fage.
Can I just add that? Okay, so if we are, firstly, don't think I'm completely against development here. I'm not, but just trying to think of what terms we might ask for. So I think we need a plan for the junction at Edworth down by the water tower, and on that east side of the A1, because that didn't feature at all, I don't think at all, in our conversations around the local plan 8 years ago. It certainly doesn't really feature in the local plan at all now. But if that's going to be a viable access point to this kind of development, and what other developments we don't know, let's include that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Knight.
Afraid it's Marmite, but I think we need a proper cycle track along London Road, not the half-baked thing we have today. And that would actually encourage people to cycle from other parts of the town down to that area. But that's going to be expensive and it will mean sacrificing the verge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I just come back? The point that has been made about the Edworth junction and the fact that at some point there is likely to be other developments coming forward. We've already likely to get this employment that's going to have to come through that site, or another junction. At some point, then that junction at Edworth will need to be improved. So I think that's something that needs to be in our report to say that we're not objecting to 136576 or 339, but that we need to make sure that the transport network and the access onto the A1 is at a point where it's much improved and where its current status. Probably repeating what everyone else has said, actually. So,
yeah. Councillor Fage.
Could just jump across to 16339. That is specifically green energy. So again, in our response, I think we should be saying something about contributions similar to the wind turbines and that fund. We should say that now.
Yep. The town clerk's making a really good note of that one, so thank you.
It's going to be a real pain. It used to be in planning that you could set up something like the wind farm where there was some sort of quid pro quo deal, and you wind farm, and then you got all your solar panels, and then you got X amount per year that went to the town. That's not part of planning anymore. So it can be done, but it has to be done as not a civil arrangement, but it has to be done as a separate arrangement from planning. So sorry, Grant, can't include But I like it, and I think as a town council, it's something you have to pursue. I think I've encouraged you to pursue it before, but it has to be outside of planning.
No, and I think we've had that with other developers and other issues around town. We've had contributions from different developers and organisations and things. But yes, it has sat outside the planning process, but I think that's more been by accident rather than anything else. But it's something I think we can still look at in relation to that. So yeah. Okay.
So we're
we're
working our way round the
sort of
map. So
anti-clockwise, so we're going
Yes.
round.
So I think perhaps the next one to just mention really is the employment site to the south there, 135340, which is the site around where the cattery is. Obviously, we've got residential that's already being built there. It's a slightly weirdly shaped proposed site there. Proposed for employment 2.86 hectares. It sort of seems as though it's an odd proposal, given that residential is already in place there, but it does back onto an employment site already. What are our thoughts on that? My own thoughts are if you're going to do it, it probably should be residential rather than employment. But there's merit for both, I guess. Depends on what type of employment is put there, what's proposed there.
Councillor Whitcomb.
So first of all, I'm happy to see that they are proposing, I'm assuming the long tail of the mouse is the access that they appear to be taking off London Road rather than taking it off the corner of Dunton Lane, if that makes sense. So the long thin tail, I believe, is access, which would make sense. Although it would run in parallel to Saxon Drive, but regardless.
Isn't that part of the green wheel?
I think that is the green wheel path, because I can't think
But
of
that's
just
access.
Yeah.
I think that's
visualising
access.
where it would be,
Yeah.
because you've got the roundabout and then you've got essentially the green wheel pathway, and then you basically got McDonald's after that.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah.
really sure. And then after that, you've got Normandy
Unless
Lane.
they're
So
saying it's going to be only accessible by sustainable forms of transport.
I don't know. I mean, it's
That looks to me like that's the access route from just the way it's been done. Anyway,
okay.
I would quite like to see that as light industrial. And I say that because Tritax Big Box and all these people who are going to go down this A1 in this big industrial site, they're all going to build massive big warehouses. And we get so many smaller businesses in Biggleswade who want smaller units, smaller modern units that are accessible. That'd be a brilliant location for something like that. And you wouldn't get lots in there, but you get enough. And so I actually think, given that it backs onto bigger units, and then there's even bigger units further south, it'd be a great little starter business space, and then they can almost work their way down through the estate. So I quite like the idea of that as an employment, but it depends what sort of employment, but I don't mind it.
Okay. All right. So I think Councillor Strawn had, and then I'll come back to you.
Well, I think it's inevitably it's going to be developed in one form or another. And I think the idea of starter units down there, or equivalent small units for the smaller business, is actually quite good, because whilst it's all very well having lots of national companies here, we do have people that locally who need to be able to run their own businesses on a much smaller scale. So I think it's vital that we actually do encourage employment for the local businesses rather than the massive national ones, so that all businesses of all sizes, and particularly starter businesses, can have somewhere to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Fage.
I'm not sure about access here, really. I'm looking at, is there access off of Juno Place? I'm trying to look at this on a map, because anything off of London Road or Saxon Drive or Dunton Lane, I'm thinking about traffic flows around peak times, particularly the morning, and I don't like the idea of another vehicular access off of any of the perimeter of that site, potentially with the exception of the very south side if there's access along Juno Place. But I fear they wouldn't have put that long tail in there if they didn't think they needed to.
I agree with that.
Same with Councillor Foster's point about the green wheel and local amenity space. I'd like to come to this as we move slightly further north, but even these little pockets of greenery, I think are quite important in East Biggleswade. Even though some of them are not very well used because they're not that accessible at the moment, I think that needs to factor into the responses that we get. I'll leave my comments there for the time.
Okay. So I'm just trying to sort of get some consensus on this one, or a little bit of consensus in that I think, am I right in thinking we would be in favour of it if the access were resolved through Juno Place? But as you say, if you could access it that way, wouldn't that be listed? And it does seem, this sort of straight red line does seem very suspicious going toward London Road, I have to say. But go on, councillor Page.
I mean, at this point, all we can do is say employment residential. And we've potentially, if we were to say yes to that very large employment site, would they need to be thinking about what kind of units smaller businesses need to get into in order to one day fill the bigger units, and where some of those businesses are going to be placed? So I'd rather we made our yes, yes, and our no, no, personally.
Okay.
And if you're not completely convinced by something, I wouldn't give the breathing space to it. And we all know who owns this land. Pretty sure it's Central Bench, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
there's too many things that are too far from perfect with this site for me.
Okay. Councillor Foster, have you got anything to add on that one?
This one is an odd one because of the fact that it could be, I think there's a view it could be either, because there's residential there currently. But I completely agree that there could be a really positive use for it for smaller business units there. So again, I think I'm not sure what our response can be because we're not really agreed on that. So I think we have to we have a bit of a rethink on that one, but it's inevitable there's going to be some form of development unless we say we are absolutely against it. And I can't see that we can come up with a genuine reason other than Councillor Page's, the fact that the access needs to be very, very clear. If we were concerned about access, I think perhaps residential is more suitable than employment, but I can't give a strong enough argument for that.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Strong, sorry.
I think the impression I'm getting is we're in favour of a development there, subject to appropriate access.
Yeah.
And the possible non-use of that finger, so to speak, for an access to it by vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. I think we're all agreed on that one. Do we want to move on around?
So
sweeping
we're
north?
sweeping north
Sweeping
to
north now.
the sort of almost the final element of residential that is to essentially the east of the town, the southeast of the town there. But one of the key things that struck me when I looked at this, obviously, and as others will have done, is that the proximity to the allotments and the sort of the proximity to the site of 1,500 houses that's already coming forward. The fact that all of this is proposed as residential, we're talking about Kennel Farm and across there, you've got Jubilee Wood is nearby. It's all of that area. Again, it's trying to come up with a strong enough argument against it and understanding the reasons why. So,
Councillor Page?
I think two words we maybe need to think about including at the right point in our response is urban sprawl and making sure that that is avoided. Back in 2018, the town council, which I sat on at the time, came to a position which was for development in village form to the east of Biggleswade. It wasn't a blank check for any form of development in any pocket of land that happens to be to the east of whether that's Saxon Drive or Baden Powell Way. If we look at the sites that have come forward here, there is already considerable flooding issues on the allotments. Again, tens of thousands of tons of concrete on the adjacent site doesn't sit comfortably with me. I mean, we could I'm less inclined to talk about access, just more, I think the point Councillor Agnew made around loss of local character. This is, you know, these developments to the east of Biggleswade that I certainly supported 8 years ago, reluctantly but firmly with condition, were not like a blank check for anything, and they were very much in village form. And this doesn't look to me like it ticks any of those boxes really. So I would be very reluctant to support any of that mishmash of numbers that we have in front of us there, but would like to know what others say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, if we lose the allotments, I think, don't we have to still provide some? So it's a sort of non-starter really. We're just wasting our time and CBC's time because they'll have to provide the land. And where else do we put it?
Yeah.
And it'll move to the outer skirts if anything, which is further away from where the people are going to be. So, and the current owners are not going to be, or leaseholders are not going to be happy to relocate, having spent years and years on plots.
Yes. Yeah.
Plus you've got the wild flower meadow at the back, which I thought was untouchable, but clearly not. And you're just filling in as well as Grant says, Councillor Fage. And there is a ton of concrete and there was a lot of water and it's finally dried up with the heat, but probably come back. But there is a lot of drainage there and it's very wet land. And I know there's just somebody's just starting to do an extra space for people to go and be there and learn gardening and stuff. And they've just started that. So if that changes, then they're not going to be happy either.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. No, I think I'd agree with that. We would have I'm sure we'd have an obligation to have allotment space somewhere else, and it's where would that be? And as Councillor Fage has pointed out, we're running out of green space within the parish as it is. A lot of people, for mental health reasons and other reasons, quite value allotment space. So I think there's all those things to take into consideration, and also it needs to be accessible for people in the town, not sort of on the fringe necessarily. Councillor Strong and then Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you. I just look at that. There's a number of different sites up in one area. And I think that to look at it overall, we need to consider it because an area of that size would have a mixture of things on it because it wouldn't just be pure housing because there'd be some of the infrastructure, there might be allotments. There's obviously got to be concerns over drainage, etc., because of the water issue. But how many houses are we actually looking at in that U shape, so to speak?
Councillor Fage.
I did a little estimate on this, which was so for 136487, I did an estimate, and because I remember looking at that parcel of land relatively recently and thought, based on the similar densities to the Orchard Chase development, you could get 200 houses just on that parcel of land there. So, if you think that's maybe a third of what we see in front of us, you're looking at 500 plus houses.
Which is more than what the Land North development have committed to already. Yeah.
Just following on from that fact, if we were looking at the quotas and trying to look at what's committed to Biggleswade overall, that seems to me to be a kind of logical area for residential development overall when you look at everything else that's going around, and particularly with the Land East Salamanca area. That seems to be a logical thing to go onto there, but it's how it's actually created because it's a big site. So it's if you add it all together, because I wouldn't expect it to be developed piecemeal. I'd expect it actually to be treated as one overall development scheme. Well, that would be the logical way of doing it, I think. But looking at if we got to meet commitments, that seems to be a logical area. With everything else we've talked about, it would be, I think it's possibly the area that we haven't objected to in one form or another so far, and we may well object to this area. So I think we need to consider that seriously. And yes, we've got to look at the comments we've had about infrastructure, road systems, etc. And some of that land, I think, is possibly owned by Central Beds, in which case if it's allotment land, we would expect them to be providing it elsewhere in the other residential development areas, if not in this particular area. there may be that there's no need for it to actually be developed as such and could remain as allotments, depending on the agreement between the landowners as to how they divvy up the money. Because at the end of the day, there's a number of people who appear to be wanting to develop and to make some money from it. And if part can only happen because of other parts being included, then how are the landowners going to divvy up the money between them? Because otherwise you'll have ransom strips here, there and everywhere. So it looks to me to be the most logical development from the point of view of the town as a whole, from those, in addition to those that are already there. But what do other members think?
Okay, Councillor Knight and then Councillor Whitaker, sorry.
I'm just going to make the point, as corporately, we are the tenant essentially with a lease on those allotments. We should probably sort of note an interest there.
Yeah, okay, done.
A couple of things. First of all, wildflower meadow wouldn't be protected. If you think up in Potton, acid grassland that is incredibly rare, still got permission to build on it. It doesn't seem to make a difference, but it does come back to that biodiversity net gain and preserving your environment. And what I would urge people to do is start surveying what's there in terms of biodiversity now, if you want to keep it. Those sites it looks such a mess, and there's so many numbers because they've kind of said you can have this bit or you can have half of it, or you can have this bit and you can have half of it. So I actually think you probably want to, because of your interest as a town council, I would say you need to look at that particular area and you need to pull out all of the pieces individually and say, actually, that's the bit with the allotments on. So we don't want that bit, but you could have that bit. So as you said, Duncan, if you think some of it's like, okay, but I think you've got to pull all of the pieces out because they've kind of nested them together. So you can have a big site or a smaller site or a slightly smaller site, which makes it really difficult, I think, to look at it like this and look at it as an overview. How do I feel? I'm not keen, I'm not going to lie. However, why would you allow development of employment land and green energy land all the way up to Dunton Lane and all of the land east stuff above it and not allow that? It would make no sense.
Councillor Fage and then Councillor Knight.
Because we
Foster.
because we don't support urban sprawl, but if there's a case for a garden community, garden villages, then that's, in my view, more. I would be more inclined to support that than just a sea of houses out towards Dunton. If I go back to the argument that I made around the extension of Home Farm down on the south side towards Langford, that green space and that mishmash of numbers beneath the 1,500 houses, that is the closest green space to probably about a quarter of the town's population, or at least it will be when the 1,500 is built out. And so preserving the green wheel which runs via that route and the Jubilee Wood and the allotments, sites which are listed in the town council's neighbourhood plan, those are reason enough to argue against urban sprawl, in my view, in favour of something that is much more village-like, which has to include those preserved pockets of greenery.
Councillor, sorry, do you want to say something?
Just to add to the discussion, I mean, I think as recently as 4 weeks ago, we were asking the consortium around the Kingsreach area about what used to be called historically Area 4, the cricket areas. We're told there's no plans for that still. Now, I'm not sure which bit of these call for sites comprises, includes that area or not, because that's just another thing which I don't know if it's going to be repurposed for housing, right, away from what was originally sports and leisure by payment, essentially.
So it's worth saying,
go on.
it's worth saying that if it was in the previous local plan, and I think all of Kingsreach was, if it was in a previous local plan, it doesn't have to be in a new local plan. Once it's been in a local plan, it's been in a local plan and it's been approved. So they wouldn't necessarily have to include it in here, although I understand that some, like Land East, for example, is in here. So it could still come forward. It's just perplexing that they don't bring it forward. But I think they are politically, strategically, call it what you like. They are, I think they're waiting to see what happens on Land East before they make their move. I do think, Grant, you've got a point, by the way, about Jubilee Wood, about the allotments, but I think that's where you've got to tease out which of those parcels is which do you absolutely want to retain, and which could you say that's not so bad? Because I'm pretty sure that's in CBC ownership, and therefore they'll be keen.
Councillor Page?
Can I just add flooding to the allotments, right? So
Yeah.
any of those, certainly those to the west side, end of conversation. We can't flood the allotments
Yep.
any more than they've already been flooded by the development that's gone there. So I've made my points.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Foster?
Some obviously really good points.
Yep.
My major concern with this one is 136825, so the proximity with Dunton Lane, so it's right on Dunton Lane. I can see arguments, because we've not referenced that in any other conversation. I think that 136825 shouldn't be allowed at all because of the nature of it, and that might then support the argument around the green corridor there. For me, that isn't supported. We've got pylons which are and the power, which again I may be wrong on this. I was trying to get my bearings because I can't share the screen, but I think that's the area to the immediate east. Am I right in saying there's a power thing to the immediate east of 136825. So again, another reason for not wanting to have residential immediately to the west of that.
Yeah.
Again, not sure what the planning argument is for that, but I wouldn't be that. Yeah, but again, it's as for that reason, I would then have similar argument for 136483 proximity to, but going forward, there will be other developments that will be close to the pylons in other areas. So, but my main concern about 136825 is sort of the fact that close to Dunton Lane and trying to keep that to some extent a little bit more rural than keep it semi-rural at least.
No, I think that's right. And I can't remember which side it is, but there is the potato farm on one side or the other, and I can't quite remember which.
One of those.
Whether it's on the left-hand side or the right-hand side of 163825 as well. But no, I take the point about the pylons and the proximity to the power station is quite valid. Go on. Yeah.
On that particular one, about that 136825, you've got your scheduled ancient monument down there as well.
Right.
And you've got your curtilage of your scheduled ancient monument. So that's the other good reason not to build that one.
Okay.
Argument, yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
But it's trying to come up with a very strong argument against the other elements, and that's the tricky part of it, I think.
That's protected. Scheduled ancient monuments, I can't remember which one it is. My brain's saying MPPF 186, but don't quote me on that. It's part of the MPPF. They have protection. So, and you can also get some support from English Heritage as well.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Foster, are we nearly at midnight with the clock, or are we?
Well, we are. For me, I'm not sure there's any other areas specifically. We can. The only other one that we haven't touched on actually is 136606, which is the one in the middle, which I don't think has come forward in that format at least. It's been talked about, I think. We need to have that in mind, and the rest of 136407, but it's not specifically referenced. I don't think before. So,
Yep.
I agree. I looked at that and I went, I don't know who owns that, and because I don't think it's under Valencia.
no.
I have a feeling it could be CBC, but I'm not 100% sure. And are the cottages there?
But this is part of Land East. It's part of the Land East.
So UK Regeneration owned a donut round around Sunderland Farm,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
So that's the middle of the donut. And so I presume what was passed on from UK Regeneration to the now landowners is, if not identical, more or less identical. So CBC sold the land originally to UK Regeneration, so I don't know why CBC wouldn't have sold the middle of the donut.
I'm pretty sure we still.
You think it's CBC though?
I'm conscious I've got Councillor Strawn politely hanging on, so I'll let him come in and
Well,
then if more councillors.
thank
Sorry,
you,
he did
Mr.
relate to the point. so I'll
Thank
let
you,
him
Mr.
in.
Mayor. In view of the donut,
Yes.
and I quite like the idea of finding what the jam is in there. We could always
Jam
do
tomorrow, possibly, Councillor Strawn.
we could always do a search at the land registry just to work out the ownership. But I think we've just got to consider we've got effectively two parcels for 136407. One being the part that's going to be developed in any event, and the other part which is down in the call for sites effectively. And this is where I think our concern is with coalescence with neighbouring parishes and the loss of a boundary between the Biggleswade and the remainder of there. So our reaction to the eastern part of 136407 might be that we do not like it before coalescence and the need to maintain some green space around the town. But 13606 might be a different issue when we actually understand what's there, because it might be 13606 might be something that we might accept if we didn't have the other part. But again, I think that's something we need to just consider.
Okay, Councillor North.
Well, just to mention this, what are we saying, Eastern 136407. That was in the original plan from UK Regeneration from 10 years ago or 8 years ago, whenever it was that they first came forward with these plans to build these 6,000 houses across that whole space of 136407. Now, at the moment, they're only really talking about the western bit of it, which is fine. So I think Councillor Strawn talking about we should offer reservations, or we should have done that 8 years ago when they were talking about it. I think we were talking then about potential coalescence with Sutton and Dunton. So it's not a new issue. It's just something that's from the past, really. I think it's always been, has it not always been on the list, if you like, as a development site? And the other part, the bit in the middle, the jam in the donut, as Duncan calls it, I think that's that's Sunderland Hall Farm, isn't it? Which is separate from Sunderland Farm, which is what the other two, what the 136407 was, and was not in the past intended to be developed. He was going to keep it as a farm. Now, okay, things obviously look as though they've changed, and whoever owns it is willing to put it forward for development. So that's a whole different issue.
Thank you, Councillor North. Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Whittaker.
No, just my observation on the point about 8 years ago. I don't think we necessarily agreed with it as a council, but it was part of the proposal. It doesn't have to be included in, accepted as a call for sites at this stage if the councils decide that it shouldn't be. So I think they are two distinct pieces. So I think we just need to bear that in mind, that I think we would have expressed our concerns at that time, but UK Regeneration wanted something and they got their 1,500, but they didn't get the rest. So it's still not in the plan, as I understand it, for development. So it may be something that we could stop going in, but.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Strawn. I actually, Councillor Whittaker and then Councillor Page. Thank you.
It's fine. I'm 90% sure that the jam is CBC owned, first of all. But other than the 1,500, it all got thrown out at the appendix. It was part of Appendix 7, which was thrown out under inspection because it wasn't classed as sustainable. And my understanding, although I might be wrong, is that in order to make it sustainable, the A1 access would have to be a lot better. So the other thing that just to be mindful of is if the town council is relying on Land East providing all of the residential housing numbers for Biggleswade so that actually you can say no to the north and all the other bits and pieces, if that A1 improvement doesn't come along and it's not sustainable, will it get through inspection? So is it any more sustainable today than it was 7-8 years ago? Is my question, and I don't know that it is. And the same caveat will apply, because they will look and say what happened at last inspection. it wasn't classed as sustainable. And CBC will be doing the work on this right now to say, what does it need to make it sustainable? Because they'll want this to come forward too. So I do think there's a question mark over whether it's possible.
Okay. Do you want to come back to Hayley's point on that? Or
Well, just
you specific? Okay, I'll let
in
Councillor
relation to
Foster and then
Hayley
Councillor Page. Yeah.
and I might be wrong on this.
Mm.
At the point that it was rejected by the inspector, wasn't it to do with the fact that CBC hadn't done a full assessment of it at that point? So as a result, the inspector said, well, you can't put that in as for in the local plan because you haven't done a full assessment of the site. I might be wrong on that. That's my recollection of the situation. So, and it may well be that it's not sustainable anyway for the reasons you've said, but I'm just not completely sure that that was the only reason.
I was there. One of the key things that the inspector said was, because remember it was supposed to be four villages essentially, and it was supposed to be like a separate thing from Biggleswade. It was supposed to have its own garden village status and stuff. And he basically said, pull the other one. It's just the other side of the road from King's Reach. It's part of Biggleswade. It's not anything separate or distinct, and therefore you've not considered what it would look like if it was part of the town. So you're kind of right. So yeah, and so it was really controversial. I've seemed to recall at the time. But I'm just not sure if and the sustainability was an issue. Yeah. And like you said, they hadn't done the work on the sustainability. And we've spoken a lot tonight about access to the A1 and being sustainable. And I don't think that problem's been overcome. But you know, they've got to have buy-in from National Highways to make it work, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so I think we're probably have a similar recollection to this. So I think the issue here is, are we supporting the eastern part of 136407, or are we not? And are we supporting or not objecting to either of those? I think is what is our approach here, because currently with the access, forget about health and all of that, the access and the constraints on the roads, if nothing else is done to Biggleswade South Roundabout and Edworth Junction, that isn't sustainable as it is. But if there were some mitigation that was put in place, again, at this stage, I can't support it, but I can understand at some point if there were a clear plan of what was going to happen with the road network, that I could.
Okay. Councillor Fage, sorry, you were hanging on.
That's okay. When part of the reason that if we go back to what we were saying about that development to the south with employment, right, and how important that junction with Edworth is, that we've never really talked about before. So people don't. So this residential 13407, if I'm not mistaken, that runs essentially along Sutton Lane, along that straight road along Sutton Lane, not quite making it to the Dunton, Biggleswade, Sutton, Edworth roundabout. Yeah. So if you think about accessibility to that site, like for me, a red line is how you get that traffic to the A1. Biggleswade is part of the answer there, although we know the challenges we're having just for the 1,500 houses. A serious solution now needs to be considered around what other access options there are to the A1, because I don't know that we have enough land in Biggleswade at key junctions to accommodate that volume of traffic, and it would have to spread to some other access point. So I don't know how to put that diplomatically. I don't know if I've even put it that clearly, but if we were just to accept 136606 on its own, hypothetically, that's all coming via Biggleswade. That's not, there's no, you do what you like at Edworth there, it's not going to go that way. The remainder of that, the 136407 probably would. So I'll let somebody else consider making a proposal at some point, but that's my view. Also, I want to stress garden villages, not urban sprawl. There you go.
I just finished some.
Oh, yeah, go
So,
on.
so essentially
Councillor
here,
Foster,
what we've got here is an extension of were this site approved, it's effectively an extension to get very, very close to Dunton. So it's effectively the site for the additional 4,500 houses is what we're looking at. With 136,606 and 136,407, that's what we would be either supporting or objecting to. The eastern side of 136,407 is already is currently in discussion, and we're in the design phase of that at the moment. We've talked about earlier about 136,620, but essentially what we're talking about is going effectively to Sutton Lane, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So we need to be very clear on what we're doing here, what we're supporting or not. If our aim has been to have the development to the east of Biggleswade, but ultimately that sits outside of Biggleswade now. That site essentially 136,606, and I think most of that eastern 407 isn't within Biggleswade. It's either Potten Ward predominantly. So, but it will impact Biggleswade in its entirety for the services.
Yeah. Okay.
I think so.
Go on quickly, Councillor Fade, and I've got a couple of others. Okay. Councillor Straw, then Councillor Thomas, please.
Well, I think I could make myself very unpopular at this stage because I think I found possible solutions as part of the access issues to the sites 136,407, etc.
Okay.
Do you want to hear it or don't you?
Why not?
Right.
Why not? And then I'm gonna
We were
try and
talking
attempt to wrap
about
something
the
up.
Edworth Junction. Why not put a road straight through 13656 being the 576 the employment area, with development either side for the main employment, but you could have a relief road straight through from there, which would take all the development from 136,407 straight out without going into the existing road system until you get to Edworth.
Yeah. Okay. Some road all the way through the middle. Okay, it's an interesting idea. Okay, I did have Councillor Thomas waiting. Is it relate to his point or not?
No, well, it's just relate.
Okay. I'll go for Councillor Thomas and then I'll come back to you. You sure? Okay. Go on, Councillor Whittaker then, please.
Just wanted to throw another thing in the mix, which is just to think about Cambridge's local plan. And have a quick look at that. I'm pretty sure, 90% sure, that as you go the other side of Wrestlingworth and it becomes Cambridgeshire, that all of the fields to the right-hand side there are all in their local plan for a huge housing estate. So we've also got to think about what's going to come from there, because you will also get some traffic come through from that direction too. And there's no guarantee that CBC would have even considered that. But it's worth just double checking their local plan to see exactly where that site is, because I know there's a lot of development planned for between sort of the edge of central Bedfordshire and Cambridge on that route into Cambridge.
Yeah, okay, sort of on the way to Wimpole, essentially.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what Councillor was saying. It's basically, it doesn't matter what we look at, other things will affect Biggleswade. And at the minute, when we did the North, Land North assessment and everything, that just proved we were at boiling point anyway. The poor little frog is actually trying to get out the pan. It's not that sat there thinking it's okay. It isn't, because the number of times I've had to avoid things or go around things.
Yeah.
Things are blocking at the retail park. Anybody crashes, it's the whole town blocks. You can't get in or out. We have the lovely conditions recently if somebody tried to fix a road or a pipe or a gas main or Hitchin Street, and the whole town was just, you couldn't move.
Yeah.
It didn't matter where you went, you were into a traffic light. On my road there was a traffic light popped up, and I asked the guy, how long are you going to be? For the obvious reason, I knew other stuff was going on, and he said, oh, we'll only be an hour. So he fixed it for an hour and he went, and the traffic light was there for 48 hours. So in light of that, all the little bits that go wrong, we can't sustain the traffic we've got. So anything you've had on this needs a huge infrastructure change. I can just see we're going to shy away from it instead of just saying, okay, now we're at the point we need to do something, because Biggleswade's not a modern town, is it? It's the paved the pavements are tiny. They have to step off the pavement to get past things. Or if there's a bush there, you've got to cut the bush down. And we're doing that. But on bridges, we've got the same problem. People cannot get around. So as like Councillor Knight said, we need a good bike route. Works in the summer, doesn't work in the winter because nobody cycles in the winter. The roads are getting a bit more dangerous. The paths are getting dangerous because of the little fast scooters and the little illegal bikes and things. And they're not, the traffic's not going around slowly, it's tearing around. So we're getting to the critical point where you'll put a few of these developments in and then the whole town will just block.
Yeah.
And the only time you can get around is not a non-work time and non-school time. And I already do that sort of bit of work and I try and get home or stay away.
Yeah.
And my movements are planned as to when I know the traffic isn't sat outside my house on a Friday afternoon for about an hour. And it's the same thing. And if it rains,
Okay.
I can't go shopping.
I'm going to take Councillor Fage's point as the last one and then going to try and attempt to wrap this up in some form, but
Well, I was going to make
I'll need your help.
I was going to make a suggestion for how you wrap it up because
Okay.
you still have time.
Yeah.
I don't think responses are, deadline is 17th of August, isn't it? So there's still a council meeting.
Yeah.
That you could bring something in writing, ready for the town council to not have the debate that we've had tonight, not the same again. But to show that we've listened to the views that have been aired.
Yeah.
And are ready to reflect and come to a credible position that has the buy-in of the full town council. So that option is available to you.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you may want to come up with something tonight. Up to you.
No, thank you very much for that, Councillor Fage. Before we enter into that sort of final phase this evening, I just want to say thank you to Councillor Foster for his hard work with the IT and the presentation and bring it up on the screen, because I think it's brought a little bit more to life, because even with the best will in the world, it's even my eyesight. I've been struggling to find some of the bits on here. So I just want to say thank you from me and for the staff as well, supporting that process as well. So Councillor Page makes a good point, and I'm now going to also, I think the town clerk wants to make a comment
I was
as well
just going to
about.
say, if you're going to decision making, you need to go back into standing orders, which you suspended. Just
Thank you for
just
reminding me.
you.
I'm just discussing at
Yeah.
the moment, but I do take your point about, yes, how if we need to make a decision, we need to vote and things. So I think Councillor Fage's comments have got some merit, but I want to hear from BTC members probably in the first instance as to how we might want to proceed, and then I'll reflect on that as chair. Councillor Strong.
Councillor Fage has made a very good suggestion, in fact, and if we were in council, I put forward a proposal at this stage that we actually make full notes of this meeting to go to a report to council on the second Tuesday in August, summarising everything that's come out, with a view to us making our observations, having reflected on the wording, and if we could have the minutes of the meeting sooner rather than later to look at. In other words, before the Thursday, that it's before the meeting, so that we've got, all members have got a chance to consider, with a view to putting forward recommendations that we've considered the matter in considerable detail at this, and that we would like to make these representations, and then the bullet points that have come out from tonight, such as lack of coalescence, infrastructure, etc., and then the observations on, because I think if I'm listened back to the minutes, and I hesitate to suggest that the clerks have got to will do that, but I think it's the way that it would be best done, is that then I think we've gone round the town in a very detail, but I think it became quite clear that certain areas were at the top of the list if we were going to have development, and others were a no, whatever happened. So
yes,
I think if we get a report like that to council, then we might actually be able to have hopefully a comparatively short debate, with a view to getting observations in within the timescale. But I think Councillor Fage's element is eminently sensible because we've done a hell of a lot today, and I think
We have.
that's credit on Councillor Foster for his effort, time there, and the support he's obviously had from the council staff in doing that. And also thank the comments from the CBC councillors here tonight because I think they've been very helpful and it's been a very constructive meeting. But that is what I would think would be the best way forward in a bad set of circumstances.
Okay, I thank you, Councillor Straw, for that, and I think I appreciate your acknowledgement of that. We've covered a lot of ground this evening, and I think that was the primary intention of doing it this way. We wanted to have this open, frank discussion, which I think we've had. I hope we've had. I think we owe it to the community, we owe it to the town to do it in this particular way. So I think that's been very, very helpful.
Can I just say?
Councillor Foster, yeah, so have you got any thoughts on that? And then we can make a proposal and I'll come out standing orders and all the rest of it. So.
I completely agree with that approach. I think the one area that I'm still a little bit hesitant on is what action, if I were trying to summarise the points, what have we agreed for the eastern point of 136407? Because I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's the biggest site, and I don't think we agreed what our thoughts were on that. Are we supporting it or are we not supporting it? Because if you're clerking this or trying to put the minutes together,
Yeah, no, we need
we're going to
an
go to
outcome.
the 14th of August meeting without a clear approach on that one. So that would be the only one that bit where I'm not completely certain. Other than that, I'm fully supportive of that approach with the key bullet points. But that bit, I think we just need to sort out this evening.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Strong.
As we haven't been in formal council for that, we've only got observations that have been made. And my observation is, I think that, and about other members, that probably we would object to that particular site on the grounds of the coalescence, a lack of sustainability and overdevelopment of the town is my gut reaction, but I may be wrong because there would be a couple of thousand houses on that site if I've got a rough feel for it.
Sorry, I think Councillor Fade, you've got something to add on that particular point, or?
I don't think we can say no to everything.
Yeah.
I don't think we can say no to everything. We should be saying no to most of it.
Yes, I think that's come out this evening. Definitely.
And I think the numbers that matter are the number of houses, not the number of sites.
True.
Right? If it is to be like my personal view is the eastern side of 136407, if it has to be something, if we have to take something between now and 2050, then subject to good design, sufficient infrastructure, garden village principles and countryside gaps, I think we should absolutely stress one more point that we really didn't make back in 2018, which is for an alternative access to a credible, proper alternative access to the A1 other than routing to the current A1 South roundabout. I don't know whether that is too strongly worded for some or not strongly worded enough for others, but if we had to take something, or maybe we don't, maybe to Hayley's point, we say, assume the A1 roundabouts are not going to be, that, by the way, that would be dependent on the A1 roundabout still being sorted, I think.
Yeah.
But what if they're not? Do we want an alternative response for that?
I think you're right, Councillor Fage. I think some of this, I know the town clerk has been furiously taking notes, and I know our committee clerk has also been recording things, that if that can be reflected in a proposed paper, which we'll get to in a second, about the conditionality of the A1, I think that will make other members who are not here for various reasons, who are on holiday, etc., to understand that it's not just been a blanket yes or a blanket no. Some of it is a bit conditional. So I think if we can emphasise that in some way, because I think Councillor Fage is right. We haven't talked about an additional access road or different spokes or whatever before. This is a new idea, which may only need to be kicked in if other things, as a trade-off for other things, perhaps, if I can put it that way. So, okay, I think we're very close to almost making a proposal. Asia, have you got everything you need at the minute? Is that okay? Do we need to make anything clearer while we've got this at the moment? Okay, Councillor Strong,
make an observation. Sure. If possible, when it comes to going to full council,
Yes.
assuming we go down that route. Councillor Fage, I think, made the point about it not being the number of sites that's relevant, it's the number of houses.
Yeah.
Is if we could actually understand the number of houses proposed on the sites, then we will at least have the clarity of what we're aiming at, so we know whether we know roughly what we're going to need to satisfy the minimum requirements and the maximum requirements. So I think it's just that little bit would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I think the town clerk has made a note of that. Anything else you want to say, Mark? Or
No, I
suspend
think
standing
actually that last a little bit. Are we broadly, kind of just clarify, are we broadly in agreement with Councillor Fage's response to the bullet points that Councillor Fage made? So subject to the access, that would be helpful. We can either agree or disagree. But
Yeah, yeah.
Are we broadly in agreement with that? I'm seeing nods, so that's.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I know that at the moment you seem to be going towards larger sites anyway, but bear in mind that smaller sites don't have to provide schools, bigger play areas. There's so much they don't have to provide in terms of infrastructure for the town that the bigger areas do have to provide. So that's another reason why you may want to go for the bigger ones, and another reason why you might say no to the other ones. I can't remember what the cut-off is. I want to say for something, but it can't be for something because Land North didn't have to provide.
Or maybe we can
Yeah.
find out in advance of the next council meeting, perhaps as a sort of note, just to find out what the housing limit in, if Karim, if you want to make a note on the. Okay, I'm going to suspend standing orders now, so I think we need. Sorry, reinstate them, got suspended. I'm conscious that we've got about 10 minutes before we need to be finished. So I'm going to reinstate standing orders. So I'm happy for the central bed members to stay where they are, that's fine, but clearly they cannot vote. So we need a proposal. Are you prepared to put on, Councillor Foster, or shall I try, or?
Whenever I make a proposal, it all ends up being woolly, so I'd prefer not to.
Okay, I will try from the notes I've tried to take. We will take forward a paper to the next council meeting in August based on the commentary and discussion we've had this evening, reflecting town councillors' views and ward councillors' input as well. So it'll be accommodated. We've got all of that recorded. Making a number of points. This is not an exclusive list because I'm not going to go through 2.5 hours worth, but key points being around conditionality of the A1, coalescence, environmental issues, sustainability around transport, and
the matters raised in the meeting.
other matters. Thank you very much.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And other important matters that we've raised in the meeting. Yeah. I think that's.
And I second that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I hope so. And then we'll bring that paper to, and then, I mean, I won't be chairing the next council meeting. Councillor Foster will have that privilege, but I'm hoping that we won't be reopening this debate very much in that meeting, because I think we've had a damn good go this evening, and everyone's spent a lot of time on it, and it's been really worthwhile. So I hope you don't spend a lot of time, because I think we've already got some really good stuff here. So. Okay, so that is the proposal I set out. Got a seconder? All those in favour? Thank you. Right, brilliant. That's carried. Thank you very much. Done. Oh, no, hang on. I've not finished the rest of the meeting. Hang on. Sorry. Ward councillors can go if they wish. I've got two of the little bits of. I'll just whiz through this. Okay, the town clerk reminds me that we've got 3 items left to do. The ward councillors can go if they wish. Planning applications, there aren't any planning applications, so we'll move on. Number 11, the financial administration. Are we all happy with the accounts?
Coming to
Move it. Oh, they're coming to the next one. Sorry, brilliant. I hadn't read that bit properly. Item number 12, there are no items for information. Public open session. So there's no one here, and I think people have contributed, so that's good. And there's no exempt items. Right, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we are. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.